Does it work? Yes. Um, Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to listen to me talk today. So my story is on lessons learned from abroad, specifically that there is a right way to handle yourself in the situation of a language barrier, and a wrong way, a really incorrect way. Um, so my story begins when I decided to study abroad in Russia last summer. I felt pretty confident in terms of my language abilities before I went. I figured 4 semesters under my belt, know the basics, family vocabulary, food, vodka, got it all under control. Um, but that was not accurate. I got to Russia and realized I don't know any Russian. And my host family, they figured that out too. Um, every day for the first 2 weeks, it was just me and the grandmother, the babushka, and she'd start off every morning and go, "You don't understand anything," which I understood that. That was hurtful. And so, um, and so for the first 2 weeks, I developed this terrible habit of just like saying yes to questions or anything that sounded remotely like a question, because I guess my logic was it's better to just answer something and hope it makes sense than ask them to repeat it 4 times and realize after 4 times that I'm still not going to understand it. It didn't work. It wasn't a very good strategy. Half the time, it wasn't even a yes or no question. I'd be like, "What time is it?" And I'd just be like, "Duh." Um, but for some reason, I kept doing it. And so I was 2 weeks in, and September 1st in Russia is a really big national holiday. It's called Den Znani, which means Day of Knowledge. And on September 1st, everyone starts school, elementary school, high school, middle school, college. And so the night before, families always get together and celebrate. And they come together and sort of start off the new year in celebration, the new academic year. Um, and so my host family had their entire extended Russian family over, which was about 15 Russian people in an apartment that was about 30 square feet. I don't know. Has anyone here been to Russia? Probably not. Their apartments are tiny. And so I was hiding in my room with no plans to leave, because the last thing I wanted to do was go try and talk to 15 Russian people. But there was a problem, which was that I really had to pee. Um, and it got so bad that I started to take drastic thoughts in my head. I was like, what if I just like peed out the window? Like would that work? Eventually, I thought, it'd probably be a lot worse if I fell out the window and had to explain that than just going. So I left my room. I ran to the bathroom, and I was like, "This is great. Nobody even saw me. Perfect. No problems." However, once I go back to my room, I open the door, and all conversation stops, and 15 Russian people are just looking at me. Привет. So this big Russian grandfather that was probably like 250 pounds, like 6'4", comes over and he just like grabs me by the shoulder and pushes me into a chair. And they want to ask me all these questions, right? Like, I guess that's logical. I'm this American student. They want to ask me about my family and, my studies. The problem is I still don't really understand Russian. And this next part of the story is a little confusing because I don't myself really know what happened. But they're asking me all these questions about my family, and I'm still just going da da and hoping it's working. And finally, they asked me, "Do you have a brother?" And they asked me a word before that. They say the word mladshi, but I don't know what that means. But I'm like, the important thing, right, is like I finally know one. So I'm like, yes, like I have a brother. And they already knew that I had an older brother. I have a brother who's 25. But they asked me if I have a brother, and I say yes. I should have known, because they were pointing at the 2 little boys in the room, that maybe the question was more complicated. But again, I just sort of blacked out. So they're asking me these questions, and then they say, so you have 2 brothers. And I was just confused. But remember, like, I'm just saying yes to things. So I'm like, yes. And they already know that my older brother's name is Luke. So they're like, oh, so you have a younger brother. You have a little brother. And I don't understand why they think that, but I'm just like, yes. And they asked me, well, what's your other brother's name? And I guess I'm just trying to like appease them. I was so obsessed with like acquiescence that I was just like, Ryan. I don't have a brother named Ryan. So finally, like, I get out of the situation, I go back to my room, and I'm like, oh my God, like, I think I just told them that I have a brother named Ryan. But I'm like, but they're not gonna remember, right? Like, there were so many people, so much was going on, like, probably nobody's gonna remember. So I go to bed, the next morning I just completely forget about it, and I go out to breakfast, just sitting there quietly eating my kasha, and then my host mother just goes, so what's Ryan like to do? And then I remember that they think that I have a 5-year-old brother because I told them that I did. And I guess this is the time where I could have like saved myself and been like, oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I don't have a brother named Ryan. Maybe I could have said I have a cousin, or I just didn't understand it. Like there was a lot of saving that I could have done for myself. Instead, I go, he likes to play chess and basketball. And then it's like, well, how do you get yourself out of that? Because then it's like, well, this girl's a sociopath, so there's only forward motion ahead. So for 4 months, remember, this happened 2 weeks in, my host family thought I had a brother, which is weird, right? Because they'd be like, show us a picture of Ryan, and I'd be like, I don't have any. Which would be like, why don't you have a picture of your cute 5-year-old brother named Ryan? They wanted to FaceTime him one time. I said, he's with his grandparents, which I had already told them that my grandparents were all dead. And they remembered that. They were like, aren't they dead? And I was like, yeah. He's with my aunt that I also don't have. My mother came to visit, and I was the translator, and I just had to pretend that any questions about Ryan were about something else. They gave me Christmas presents to bring home to Ryan. It got so bad that someone was like, why don't you just find a picture of a little boy? So I did this. This is Photoshop. Enough people told me that it does not look good at all that I never showed them, but I never told them the truth because, 4.5 months later, I understood Russian pretty well, right? I had been there for a while, I could speak it. But, it's like, oh, by the way, that thing 4 months ago, that lie that I've been building on for 4 months, it's just a misunderstanding, language barrier. So I came back to the United States. They still text me about him sometimes. So I guess if there was a moral to the story, don't go to Russia. Or maybe next time just pee out the window and take your chances, not leave the room. But I don't know. I guess I learned a lot of character building in that, and maybe next time it's just better to say I don't understand. But yeah, that's my story. Thank you for listening.